Hey everybody, welcome! My name is Kurt, aka the Vitruvian Gamer, and I'm here with a new Kickstarter preview! Alright, so some of you might remember that about 2 years ago I did a playthrough together with Elisa of this very small game called Beyond the Mist. It was a very cool two-player game made by Babis Gioannis. And it was a project of his. He was doing a Patreon, and you could have give ideas for this game to expand the game. But then a publisher picked up this game, and well, as they say, one thing led to another, because who would have thought that that small card game would turn into a game like this? Galactic Warlords Battle for Dominion by Archona Games. Now, this game is, you can say, a area control game. Plays pretty smooth, actually, for a big game. You will see when it's on the table. So I'm going to show you how to set up the game, and well, I'm going to also talk about the rules of this one. Before I start, remember, this is a Kickstarter preview. This is a prototype. I also don't know if this will be the box size. This is a pretty big box. And also, of course, the components are not final at all, although the artwork is looking pretty well, so that's going to be final, but a lot of things might still change. And if you're interested, go and look at the Kickstarter. I will put the link in the description. But without further ado, let's see how we set up Galactic Warlords. As many games do, you begin by placing the game board at the center of the table. Then you take 12 planets, and there are 6 colors, and you take 2 of each. You will be needing these, but there's also another pile of planets. Depending on the number of players, which means 6 in a 2-player game, 7 in a 3-player game, and 8 in a 4-player game, you take out random planets. Let's do this for 2 players for now, and you shuffle them together with the other 12. When shuffled, you place 2 of these planets in each outer region, and in a 2-player game, 2 in the middle. In a 3-player game, there will be 3 here, in a 4-player game, 4. After doing so, reveal every planet in the middle sector right over here. Like this. Now place these tokens on their track on the board and place them to start with at the first spot of their track. After you did so, count every color of planets there are and advance the track of that color by 1 for each of the planets. For example, the white planets, I have 2, will advance 2, the yellow will advance 1, blue 2, brown 1. I don't have any green planets, neither do I have any reds for now. Place the wound tokens somewhere on the board or next to the board where players can reach them, and do the same with the combat dice. Now take these tokens here, shuffle them, and put randomly 1 of them on each of these spots on the reputation track. 1 of them will not be used and will go back to the box. After putting these tokens here, you can reveal them. And these tokens will be explained later in this video. Now give each player 1 of the player boards in a color of their choice, 20 infantry units, of which you place 2 in the mission spot, 3 tanks, which you place in a launch pad, and 2 dropships, which are also placed in the launch pad space on the player board. Also, each player will have 1 of these ship standees. I don't know, maybe they will be different in the real game, and 2 of these recon tokens, which you can place somewhere near your board with this symbol facing down. Also give each player a battle chart and one of the defender reinforcement bonus cheat sheets. Then each player places their round marker on the first spot on the reputation track and their point marker on the 0 point spot. Give an overview card like this to each player or put them somewhere next to the board where everybody can look at them. Take all support cards, shuffle them and put them down in a face down draw pile somewhere next to the board. Then take the mercenary cards and depending on the number of players, take all cards that are for that number of players. In this case, 2-player game, remove every card with 3+ on them. These can go back into the box. Shuffle the other cards, then deal 5 cards to each player and players get to choose 2 of them to discard and 3 of them to keep. The discarded cards go back into the mercenary deck. After you shuffle it, put the mercenary deck on the mercenary deck space next to the board and reveal the 4 top mercenaries. Then each player gets to draw 1 support card and also put them in their hands, and then you decide who goes first, and then you are ready to play Galactic Warlords. But before we begin, let me tell you how the game can end. There are 3 ways to end the game. When a player has in front of him 4 mercenaries with the same color or symbol in the left top corner, then the game will end immediately. If at any moment in time a player needs to hire a mercenary from this mercenary market and there are none anymore, then also the game will end after every player plays 1 more turn. Also, if one of the players reaches the end there, which also says game end of the reputation track, the game will end immediately. That's the way to end the game. Now we'll see how to play the game. The game of course starts with the starting player and will move clockwise around the table. In a player's turn, there are 4 steps, which are denoted right here on the player board. Very easy. First you have recovery. In the recovery phase, every unit that you have in the decon, so let's just do this as an example, every unit in the decon will move to the ready for action launch pad. Every unit in your mission area and in your medic bay will go to decon. Next, you will have to move your ship. This is a mandatory action. Now, at the beginning of the game, your ship is next to the board, so you'll have to place it in one of the 3 revealed sectors. Like this. Later in the game, if you have to move your ship, you can go to an adjacent area from where your ship is. If doing so, and you come into an area with unrevealed planets, you will reveal them, like this, and advance the track of those colors by 1 for each planet revealed. Now, in a true 2-player game, a ship cannot enter an outer region where there's already 1 ship. In a 4-player game, they cannot enter an outer region where there are 2 ships already there. The core, they have unlimited space. You can get there with 4 ships if the situation would be like that. The next step is to play a mercenary, which is also the action phase. Now, in the action phase is also the phase where you could play your support cards. These can be played before or after your actions that you're doing. If you play one of these cards, you resolve it, and this goes into a discard pile next to the draw deck of the support cards. To play as a mercenary, you will look at the cards in your hand, choose one of the 3 mercenaries you have, and place them in your army, or however you want to call it. Now, if you do so, the first thing, well, you're going to do the actions, but later on you might want to try to fill up these circles in the same color. But I will explain that later. Now, let's say we place this mercenary right over here. First thing we do is we're going to look at the number in the bottom left corner. And then we take that many units from our reserve and place them in the launch pad area of our player board. If these would run out, then you cannot place more than you have. Then we are going to look at these symbols right over here. These are the actions that you are going to be able to take. Now, there are quite a bit of different actions, and I'm going to try to explain them to you. But you can have some help by this nice overview sheet of the actions. First action that you can do is a deploy action, and that's with these symbols here. Now you can see there are two different ways to deploy, one with the black middle here and with the white middle. Now, if you play one with the black middle, then you can do a deploy only action, which means you can place units on the planet where your ship is, but it has to be empty, so there is not allowed to be any enemy units on there. To deploy, choose up to 3 of your units from the launchpad. These can be infantry units, dropships or tanks, and place them on the planet of your choice. Then you're going to score points equal to the low number or the bottom number on the track of that colored planet. In this case, let's zoom in a little bit. We deployed on a white planet, so we get 1 point. As I already mentioned, we also have these deploy action symbols with the white in the middle. You can do the same deploy action as I just did, but you can also do an invade action. Should the planet that you want to deploy on have enemy units on them, you will have to invade. To invade, you simply take up to 3 units from your reserve and place them on the planet that you're invading. This will trigger a combat. Now, combat in this game is quite simple, but you will probably need the battle shard to help you a little bit. But before we're going to do that, let's talk a little bit more about the circles on the mercenaries. Because in the round that you played your mercenary and you completed a colored circle by doing so, you can, before or after doing all of your other actions, take one of your available units from the launchpad and place it as a guard right over here. Now, this guard does 2 things. First, it will defend these 2 mercenaries against an assassinate action, which will be shown later. The second thing is, in a combat, they might drop in a fight to help. Also, when this is the second circle of that color, you get to do a bonus action, a skill action, which are depicted here. So if I would ever cover my second yellow, I can do a covered up action immediately, which lets me do a deploy action on any planet on the board. You'll also have heavy assault, call for support, and one that still has to be named. Now, should we go back to our example of our invasion, then the yellow player might want to send a guard to help their units. If one of their mercenaries with the same color symbol as the planet that's being invaded has a guard, the player can choose to take that guard and place it on the planet to help. Now, this still has a 3 unit limit, so if there were already 3 units on there, the guard will not be able to join. Combat is very easy. They work with these combat dice. And of course the help of the battle chart. You will count your units as an invader and you will get number of dice depending on those units. For example, in this example we have 2 infantry units and 1 tank. 2 or 3 infantry units always give 2 dice, and a tank gives you 1 if you're the invader, but gives you 2 when you are the defender. They also have some special abilities. For example, if you're the attacker, and you can roll also these symbols, which are normally a miss, but with the tanks it also counts as a hit. So the attacker roll their dice first, and every one of these symbols is a hit. So in this case I will have 2 hits. Sometimes you will have your dropship there as well. Now after rolling the dice you can spend the dropship special ability, which is called Zoom Air Support, to reroll one of your dice after rolling in this phase of battle. After the attacker rolls, the defender gets to roll as well. Again, he looks at the chart here, and in this case he has 3 infantry units, so he gets 2 dice. Well, let's look at the defender, of course. 2 dice for the defender. He will roll the dice as well. All misses. So we have 2 hits from the attacker and no hits from the defender. So at this moment 2 of the yellow ones will disappear, and we go to another round of fighting. We roll dice again. This time we have 3 hits because this symbol with a tank is also a hit, and the defender still gets to roll 1 die because of his 1 infantry unit. That's 1 hit. So the defender will have to remove one of his units because he only has 1, and the attacker chooses one of his units and has to remove 1 as well. Now, one thing I forgot: as soon as a battle starts or an invasion starts on a planet, that kind of planet will devaluate. So we move the token of that planet's color back 1. So later in the game this will be worth less points. After winning an invasion, you score 1 point, and you'll move your marker on the reputation track by 1 spot. That's depicted by these symbols here. As you can see, the reputation track, each step, or almost each step, has 2 choices. So when going there, you will have to choose which reward you will get. In this case, I would get either 1 infantry unit in my depot, or my launch pad, or 2 points. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the reputation track before we continue with the other actions. There are these random symbols in front of each part of the track, which means that every time you do an action with the same symbol in that part of the reputation track, you will also get to advance by 1. Now, if this blue player would ever go here, then after that he will have to do the Assassinate Action to advance. But the yellow player will still need to do the Support Action. And remember, if a player reaches the end of this track, the game ends immediately. Back to the possible actions. And I already mentioned the next one that I'm going to talk about, which is the Assassinate Action. When playing the Assassinate Action, or using it from the mercenary you just placed with this gun symbol here, you have, well, 2 choices depending on your opponent's tableau. Should the yellow player assassinate the blue player, or do an assassinate on one of his mercenaries, there are 2 things that can happen. He can, maybe all of the units of the blue player are protected by a guard. In that case, an Assassinate Action can remove one of the guards and put it in the medical bay of that player. If one or more of his units are not protected, he can also choose to put a wound marker on that unit. When doing so, you cover its colored symbol here with one of these tokens, which means the mercenary is still there, but at the end of the game, and maybe later to send a guard that's not placed yet into a combat, this symbol doesn't count, because at the end of the game you are going to score points for your mercenaries depending on the colors over there. The next possible action is Subterfuge, which is denoted by this handshaking symbol. When doing a Subterfuge action, you choose one of the other players and you draw one of their mercenaries from their hand at random, like this. You look at them and you decide. You can do 2 things. Either you keep this card in your hand and give one of your mercenaries in your hand to that player, or you do one of the actions on that mercenary, and after doing so, you give it back. Now in this action, when doing so, you cannot do another subterfuge action with the mercenary that you drew. The next action is bombard, which is this symbol here with the rockets. When you bombard, you have two choices. And let me tell you one thing before I start. When doing a assassinate action, when doing a subterfuge action, when doing a bombard action, you have to send a unit to do so. In that case, you move one of your available units here in the launchpad to the mission phase. I forgot to tell you that. Very important, of course. So in this case, if you're going to bombard, you have two choices in this case. You can either send an infantry unit to the mission. When doing so, you get to kill one infantry unit of the opponent on any planet on the board. But you can also choose to send one of your dropships. If doing so, the dropship gets removed from the game and you get to kill one infantry unit on a planet, then roll 2 dice, and for each hit on those dice, you get to remove one unit on that planet of the opponent. And a unit is not only infantry units, but also tanks and ships. The next action is the support action with this symbol here. Again, to use it, you send one unit to the mission and then you can do this. This is very simple. If you do so, you draw one card, the top card from the support deck, and take it in your hand. These support cards, you can only use one each round, but you can have multiple in your hand at one time. Last but not least, you have a recon action, which has this symbol right over here. When you do this action, again, you send one of your available units to the mission, and then you get to look at one sector with unrevealed planets. For example, I could look at these planets. I can look at them later in the game as well, because I've reconned them, so I know what these are, and I get to place one of my 2 recon tokens. Now, one is with a deploy only symbol and one with the deploy symbol, which can also invade. You secretly choose one of these and place them in the sector you just reconned. Later, if you would ever get with your ship into this region, with your movement of your ship, they will get revealed. Don't forget, the tracks would advance of that color, and you will get to do the deploy action for free. Now remember, during your turn, if you have enough units here, you can place one of them on your cards, on your mercenary cards, to be a guard, if the cards are of course making a full circle. And remember, one of these 2 has to be placed that round to do so. If you don't have enough units to do this, or you choose not to do so, you will not be able to put a guard on there later. Now, I forgot to explain one thing, and I'm sorry about that, but if you, as a defender in an invasion, get to place one of your guards as a support on the combat, you also get a reward depending on the color of the circle they are coming from. So for example, if you have a guard here on a blue circle, you can, and these are blue and yellow, you can place this guard as a defender on a yellow or blue planet when that's being attacked. Remember, no more than 3 units on the planet of each player. But you also get to trigger this colored ability, which are on this little card to help you. As you can see, invasion, planet devastation, so the track goes down by 1. The defender reinforces, and if he does so, for example in this case blue, then he gets to do a marksman action, and after his first battle roll he can reroll any amount of combat dice. For example, you also have first strike, which as an invader has to roll 1 die during the first battle instead of however 2 or 3. You have the bolster, which means that the first round in the battle you also hit with these nuke symbols, or you can fortify, which gives you in the first round 1 additional die. So very important bonuses. I almost forgot about those. Now, after you have done all the actions on your card, and some of these guys have 2, some of them have 3, then your action phase ends and you draw another mercenary, you hire another mercenary. And to do so, you just take one of the available mercenaries from the market. Or you can blindly draw the top card of the mercenary deck. If you do that in a 3 or 4 player game, nothing happens. If you do that in a 2 player game, these 4 cards get discarded and the top 4 mercenaries from the draw pile are placed in the market, speeding up the game a little bit. You take the chosen mercenary in your hand, replace it by the top mercenary, and your turn ends here. Now, play will continue until one of the 3 end game triggers are triggered, and then you go to the end game scoring. Scoring is pretty straightforward. You will already have some points scored during the game, and then you have 3 more things that will score you. First, you're going to see look at each planet that you control that matches the planet with one of your mercenaries. So, for example, I have this mercenary in my tableau, and maybe I have 2 planets with units of mine on it, 2 brown planets. That means this mercenary would score me 2 points. I do this for every mercenary in my tableau. Look at the board, see how many planets I control, and that's how many points I have. Next, you have Dominion. Now we're going to see who's dominating a certain color of planets. So in this case, you don't count the number of planets that you control of that color, but you count the units on those colored planets. And then you will score, if you do have the most units on that color of planets, the top number of the track. So, as you can see, if there has been a lot of fighting on a planet, you might score nothing for having a control of or the most units on each planet type. But if not that much combat was there, you might score 2 and even 4 points for controlling those planets. Last but not least, you also score 1 point for each card that is still on your mercenary cards. You tally up the points, and at the end of the game, the player with the most points is the winner. So folks, that's an overview of Galactic Warlords. Now, it might look that there is a lot of things going on, and there are, but somehow this game plays really smoothly. Turns go very quickly. You just do your 4 steps of the round. Actions are pretty fast. Also, combat is very basic, but also very fast, which I really like. It's not convoluted, very simple, straightforward. In the end, it's mostly about playing the right cards, using the right moments to maybe put a guard there or send one of those guards to help you defend, keeping an eye on the reputation track bonuses, so you can advance there, because that might score you a lot of points, keeping an eye on the colors of the planets that you are going to control or have majority in, because some of these planets are worth nothing, so you want to keep an eye on those things as well. Very cool way to play this game. It plays really fast. I've played it with 4 players at Spiel. I played it with 2 players here at home, and both times it was a big success. Really cool game. Now, I would call it a game somewhere between its original game, which was Beyond the Mist, a very small card game, which you can still see in this game, especially of course with the mercenaries and also with the planets, but also that combined with a game like, for example, Cry Havoc. But in the end, it plays very smoothly, very cool, and I'm looking forward to see the full produced game of Galactic Warlords. So, if you think this might be something for you, go and check out the Kickstarter for Galactic Warlords. This game deserves to be funded, in my opinion. The designer is a great guy. The team of Archona games are really cool, and they put a lot of work in this project. And well, in the end, it is a pretty good game as well. So check out the Kickstarter if you're interested. And well, I thank you all for watching this preview. I hope you enjoyed it. And well, I'll see you all later. I'll see you all in the future. Bye bye.